Yes, a little Hanson in honor of Friends from College. Just jam.
Yeah.
For you podcast listeners, we're bopping in here. Of course, Jay, this was featured in season 1 of Friends from College.
Yes.
Of which you are a series regular, playing the very quirky, very hilarious Marianne.
Yes.
And guys, this is Spotlight On. My name is Jeff Graham, and as I mentioned, I'm here with Jae Suh Park. You guys know Jay from a lot, but most recently, Netflix's huge hit Friends from College, which has one of my favorite casts of any show that's really airing right now.
Thank you.
Season 2 is just announced, and I love your performance on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm very excited to have you here. Guys, before we went on air, I was going to say Jae Suh Park, but I was corrected to say Jae Suh Park, and we started having a conversation about this. Technically, what would be the official pronunciation of your name if we were not being self-centered Americans?
No, it's not even about being self-centered. It's kind of like the placement of your tongue.
Okay.
Like if you're not born saying it, it's very, very difficult.
I'm sure.
It's Suh.
Jae Suh Park.
See,
I can't really.
Totally wrong. It sounded completely different to me. You just said Smith.
Did I?
But
is it the
well,
dialect or the pronunciation too, or
the S? We don't have a hard S.
Okay.
It's a very soft S, but the American English S is a S.
Yeah.
But this is a Suh. So
Okay,
it's a
softer.
very softer S. So it's very, very difficult to say.
I'm sure.
So no one can really say it, who's American.
Right.
So when we first moved to the U.S., my parents were just frustrated, and they were just like, you know what, we're going to change it. To Korean people, obviously, we're still going to be Suh.
Right.
But to Americans, we're just going to... Because everybody was just saying Sue anyways. I don't know why, because it would technically be
Suh.
duh, like
Or,
Suh,
yeah.
right? That's, which is even worse.
Yeah.
So they were just like, yeah, we're just going to say Sue. So that's kind of like how I grew up saying it.
Well,
so
it's
kind of weird
nice
when people say it right.
At least it's close to your name. It's so interesting. I went to a university in the Midwest, and all of particularly Asian foreign exchange students would just pick American names. And it kind of bummed me out because
Yeah.
I was like, how lazy are Americans that we won't even mispronounce your name? It's literally we're so lazy that instead of learning and at least trying to say your name,
Yeah.
we'll just say Claire or Daisy or something.
Well, I think, especially maybe our generation, maybe not so now, but there was so much pressure to assimilate and so much pressure just to kind of be American that I think it was embarrassing. Like when
Yeah.
people said, my full name, my real full name is Jaewon, but basically because it's two names in my social security card, basically they made the J part my first name
Right.
and then the one part my middle name when it should actually be together. So growing up, it's tradition for my family to always have that first J name. So my brother's Jaehan, my cousin's Jaren, Jaeho, Jaewook, everybody's J. But because it all got split up, everybody thought our first name was Jay.
So you all have the same name.
All of our name is Jay.
Nice.
Yeah, so my friends would call and they'd be like, is Jay home? And they'd be like, girl
Yes.
Jay or boy Jay? So yeah. Yeah,
That's
there was
very
always a Jay
interesting.
home.
I want to resume this very interesting conversation. I'm always interested in the cultural experience of all the people I get to interview, but I want to start by talking about Friends from College because
Yes.
we're a TV network and
do it.
our fans love this show. I count myself among those fans. It kind of snuck on Netflix with this unbelievable cast. Of course, Nick Stoller's writing and directing, who I've been a fan of for a long time. Season 2 is just announced, which we're super excited about.
Yes.
We have a little teaser that I'm going to call to now. Marissa, whenever you're ready, you can bump that teaser.
It's the engagement party. I don't know why I invited all those people. Ethan, Sam, Lisa, Nick, and Marianne all together in the same place for the first time since Sam's 40th.
They're your best friends for some reason.
You're right. You're right. They are really great people.
Well, I didn't say that.
I said no strippers.
They're gonna be on their best behavior.
Nice.
And we are.
I'm
on our
sure.
best behavior.
That's what
It's really boring this season. We're really, really nice.
tame.
We do nothing.
That's
We
good.
just-
That's season 1. I wished you guys would have been a little more outgoing,
yeah,
a little more responsible.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear in
Well,
season 2
yeah.
you're toning it down.
Yeah. It's just going to be a book club, basically. We discuss the same book for 8 episodes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. For those who have seen the show, you know that, of course, we're being very facetious. It's one of my favorite things about the show is the characters are kind of prickly, and the show is very open about that, which I really appreciate about the writing. For those who haven't seen Friends from College, how would you describe the show to them?
Shockingly, it's about friends from college. I know it's weird.
I didn't expect
why
that.
they named it like that, I have no idea. It's about, I guess it's about friendships, and what do friends from college really mean? Because I have obviously, it's such a very special time. You're not a child, you're not an adult, you're kind of in between, you're figuring it out, you're figuring out who you are, how you belong, and you form these friendships, and they become life friendships, but you're like, wait, I'm not that same person.
Right.
Or am I? I don't know.
That's
and
what the
these people
show-
bring, and
Right.
that's what I think the show really touches upon.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I related to that so viscerally, and I'm fairly recently out of college, but one thing the show is so interested in that I think is not explored a lot in a lot of art is the fact that when you revisit old friendships, you can kind of regress, and a lot
Yeah.
of those old habits kind of
Yes.
come back out.
Yeah.
Was that something that appealed to you when you were reading for the part?
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. I mean, but that's the thing. Those things do come out, but it's almost like you play a role, and you don't even think you're doing it, but you just feel like, oh, I was this one, I was the funny one, or I was the serious one, or I was this, and you just like kind of fall back into it. And there is definitely that regression that happens, I think, with friendships. I don't know. It can be unhealthy, I guess. I mean, in this show, it definitely explores that. But, but I think that's what makes these friendships so special, because you do share that history
Yeah.
that you don't with everyone. So
It gives the show this really unique kind of emotional grounding that I think a lot of comedies don't necessarily have. Of course, it's created by Nick Stoller and his wife, which I think is really neat to see them working together. But I've been a fan of his work for a long time, but one thing I like about this show is I think it does have a bit more of a dramatic streak than maybe some of his earlier work. When you're talking with him on set and, reading his material before you're going on
I
set.
don't talk. He doesn't let us talk.
He doesn't
to
let you
him.
talk? No. He just sits behind in Video Village. And...
Yeah, he's got one of those big megaphones, and he yells at us, and then he sends his assistant to.
And it's a walkie-talkie kind of thing.
Yeah, and we can't look at him
Right, I
directly
figured.
in the eyes.
I've gotten that
It's all in
impression.
the contract.
Sounds like a very healthy set, Jay. It sounds great.
I drink a lot on set.
It's good, like your character.
Right.
It's perfect.
Yeah. Just white, though. White
yeah,
wine, if you've
just
seen
white
the
wine.
show. Yeah.
But what's interesting to me is I would think you'd have to do some pretty subtle kind of work as an actress to make sure that you're still being funny but kind of touching on some of those more serious notes. Is that something that you're pretty thoughtful about when you're on set?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, because it is true. We do discuss that. Like, a lot of times we're like, is this too much? Like, should we pull it back? Are we being crazy? Are we just yelling, And there are appropriate times for when you're yelling. I think Nick's very good about the different kinds of levels and hitting those levels. And I do think you have to be mindful because, I mean, you're not always one thing. Just as like a regular person. But for me, I think the funniest comedy is the real stuff, the real reactions.
Right.
It's the situations. You have to trust that the situations are funny and crazy, but how you react, you should do it in a normal, or whatever that means, in a, heightened normal manner.
Right.
And I think that's a lot funnier.
Yeah, I think with a show like this, and I'm not even remotely an actor, so please correct me if I'm just speaking about this in a way that's like so eye-rolling for our fans, but you kind of just have to exist, right? Like you sort of just have to truly transport yourself into those situations, and I think if you're trying to act, that's when the scene kind of falls apart.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just telling somebody, the minute that you try to be funny, it's the unfunniest thing ever.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah. Or sometimes like you have an idea in your head that, oh God, this is going to be the funniest thing. And then you do it and crickets, And then other times you're just kind of in it and you do something and it's the funniest thing.
I'm sure.
It is that trust, I think, in yourself. Nick has, I think the great thing about the show is that Nick has so much trust you know, with all of us. I mean, so many times he'll just come up to me and say, do something funny. Okay, go.
Right.
I'm like, oh,
Here I go.
Okay, you know, and I think just knowing that he has the trust, you have the confidence to do it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that's great.
Right.
That's nice.
That's the safety of a really positive set. And the thing I have to say is that this is truly one of the best casts on TV right now. It's Kobe Smulders, who you guys know from How I Met Your Mother. Nat Faxon, who I've liked as a writer for a long time. He wrote the screenplay The Descendants and won an Oscar for that. But I'm trying to remember who else.
Fred Savage.
Of course, Fred Savage, who's a legend.
Keegan-Michael Key.
Oh yeah, Keegan-Michael Key's in it.
Reese.
Yeah, so it's like really this just incredibly solid cast of performers who all have experience in comedy, but also in some dramatic work, and I think it's all kind of coming to a confluence on this show. What's that been like to just work with such kind of legendary collaborators?
Oh gosh, I think it was a mistake. I think that they probably made a mistake casting me. They were like, you know, I was the one, the headshot, you know, below the headshot they were supposed to cast.
Well, I'm very glad that mistake was made, Jay. It's good.
So don't tell
Thank
anybody.
God. Yeah.
That's what I say. Just don't say anything. Just do your stuff and go home. No, you know, the thing about them is that they're all awesome, amazing actors, super funny, but they're also the nicest, just wonderful people.
Good.
And you don't get that, you know, on most sets. I've heard it's so funny because, like, you know, a lot of times, you know, people will those transpo guys, they pretty much know, you know, everybody in town, and they're like, you know, there are people, like, we hear everything, we see everything, and you guys are the nicest people, and you guys actually like each other, and you guys talk to each other. You know, that's not always the case, and I'm just thinking, really? But
Yeah.
I guess so.
That's
Yeah.
so, it's so, you sometimes get nervous to meet your heroes in these kinds of situations. It's interesting, when I first moved to LA and I was just like trying to survive and eat, I was doing background work with Central Casting. Which, if any of you guys don't know, that's like extras in television shows who
I'm
are
trying to
just...
think if I've ever done anything with Central Casting. I'm sure I have.
It's a very, very fulfilling work. It's a lot of, if you guys notice, like people acting like they're eating in the back of the scene. I did a lot of that for my first year. I pretended to talk to people.
Oh God, God, I have the most. I did some extra work when I first moved here, and I actually did. There was a movie. LL Cool J was in a movie. I think it was LL Cool J. I think Gabriel Union was in it. It was called Deliver Us from Eva. I don't know if you remember this movie. But so we were like in a bar scene, and I was heavily featured. They put me like right behind LL Cool J, right? So it's just basically him and a friend, and they're talking at the bar, and you just see me in the background, right? And I've never seen it. But recently it was on cable or something. I was like, oh, I'm going to see this, you know, just kind of flip on it. And I see that scene. And it's the most embarrassing thing I've ever done in my life. I'm just overacting. I'm just like...
I'm sure.
Like, I could not believe it. And it was horrendous.
I was terrible. The one nice thing for me as a background actor was I have a very just like generic white male look. So like I can be a cop. It's like I'm definitely not attractive enough to ever be cast in like a good looking person role, but I'm not quite ugly enough to be cast in like an ugly person role.
Okay.
So I was like a great White House aide or like Bleacher, like Spectator.
Yeah.
But so I was doing a ton of background work, but my very first job was Scandal. And the only, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to work on all these amazing sets. But they tell you to not smile or look at the camera.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my very first take, I'm just smiling, walking down the hallway, and I don't know why they kept bringing me back, but...
Did they have to cut? Did they know?
Well,
did they...
that's the issue. I guess I was maybe pleasant enough that I would never get like reported for being terrible at my job, so they would just keep bringing me back. But and I got better. I did learn. The reason I brought it up though is because I'm speaking to your point of it is true that most sets aren't as friendly, and it was interesting for me to be on sets with actors I really admire and notice that they might not be quite as patient or gracious as they act like they are on red carpets or you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a set can also be like a really stressful time. You're
for
there
sure.
for a really long time. Maybe, you know, it's hot or you're hungry or I mean, there's just so many things that's going on. And you're up at the crack of dawn and maybe it's the 16th hour and you know, you need to go home. I don't know what it is. So
It's true.
I do understand it. To a certain degree.
Right. There's certain lines where it's like that's tolerable, and then somewhere you're like, ooh, I don't know if we're all better for the way you just acted. You know, like I don't know if the atmosphere of the set has improved because of this behavior, but it is understandable because especially single cam, which you guys are shooting, are really, really long days. How long? Like, what's the general production timeline for like an 8-episode season?
Well, we the actual production, I mean, I know obviously they do pre-production and all of that stuff, but the actual production is only 2.5 months.
Yeah.
We shoot.
Which, when you think about it, for, I guess, 5 hours of material, that's pretty busy. I mean, you guys are you shooting
packed.
like 10 pages a day, or? I guess it depends on the day.
Gosh, it really depends on the day.
Yeah.
And it really depends on what you're doing that day. And there's, obviously like technical things or stunt things that's going to take a lot more time. Two-person scenes are going to go really fast. Right. If you're doing a scene with Keegan, he's just going to improv for 5 hours. So you're there all day. But yeah, I mean, it really depends on the day. But yeah, we definitely squeeze a lot in.
I'm sure. Speaking of behind the scenes stuff, one of my favorite episodes from last season was your guys' wine tour. I just want to hear, like, I feel like as an outsider to the show, like, I was having so much fun watching that on screen. What was that like to shoot? And are there any, like, behind the scenes stories from that day?
The funny thing about that week was we did go to North Fork, and there was kind of a wine. It's kind of a new wine thing going on over there. But my daughter and my husband were coming out to New York to visit me.
Fun.
And I didn't know my schedule ahead of time, but my husband just had like a hiatus that specific week. And it turned out it was that week. So instead of coming to New York, they had to hang out in New Jersey. So it wasn't the most fun time for them. And I think there was like one aquarium, and my husband said it was the most depressing aquarium. It was like one fish.
I mean, Jersey. I don't want to smack talk Jersey, but
yeah. Or is that Long Island? Is that the same as Long Island?
maybe.
I don't know.
Personally, I don't want to be biased, but I find New York to be a little depressing. I feel like it's fun for like a day, but I'm so preferable to LA personally. Just 'cause
Where are you from?
I'm from Cleveland.
Oh.
So, but it's kind of like if you want to work in the business, you either choose New York or LA. And my wife works in late night, as you know, and luckily she got like the one late night show that's out here. So I think maybe in our future we could end up in New York depending on where she goes. But.
I know New York is definitely, it's definitely a young person's town. Like it's a lot. It's exhausting. It really is exhausting. It is fun to visit. I actually really like Brooklyn. I stayed in Brooklyn the last time. But you got to have a lot of money.
Right. That's what it is. You can kind of survive in LA on less of a budget, but New York, it's like very, very expensive.
It's very hard.
So you guys were shooting in New York for the entire first season, is that right? Okay. I thought maybe you guys, of course, because the show takes place in New York. It's one of those brain fart moments.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
It's probably, it could be in Atlanta. It could be in Vancouver.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a lot of on-location shooting for you guys, which, of course, that can also lead to long days because you don't have the convenience of a set necessarily. Any funny moments shooting on location specifically that affected production or anything that our fans might be interested in?
The first season actually, not funny, haha, but Trump actually won while I was going back and forth quite a bit because of my family. And I was actually, the election was going on, and I was actually on a flight back. And, everybody was watching it on the thing, and Trump won. And
so you were in the air when
I was in the air
Wow.
when he won, when it was announced. And then the next day, because we were shooting outside, and we had to actually shut down production because a big protest went down. So it was very surreal. It was a very interesting time.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the show Smilf on Showtime. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to catch that. It's really, really good. With Frankie Shawn, Rosie O'Donnell's in it, and Connie Britton. It's a really interesting show. But they were talking about how just something that monumental, just because obviously none of us expected the results of this election. It's been, for lack of a better word, a very interesting couple years. But I think for artists and anyone, it is kind of like a show-stopping moment. Like, I think of course it affected production just because it's just been a very interesting 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's calmed down quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And we need comedy to get us through some of the tough things, which makes me want to ask about season 2. I know you're probably not allowed to say much, but we're just like salivating to know as much as we can. So anything you can share about season 2, maybe about Marianne or the journeys of the characters.
Well, it continues.
Great. That's good to know. It's not an anthology.
It continues
and just
forward. Yes, it's keeps going forward.
Yes. If I remember right, there was a Jeep in a pool at the end of last season.
Yeah, there was a Jeep in a pool, and then the affair, Keegan's character never confesses, but Kobe's character confesses to her cheating. So there's a lot of changes.
Okay.
A lot of changes.
But it sounds like questions do get answered.
They do.
Good. That's always good.
The questions get answered, and then at the end of the season, there are more questions.
Oh, good. That's what we would hope for.
A lot more questions. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's all I can really say. I mean, there's so many changes. Everybody goes through a lot of changes, but we're still who we are.
Good. Okay, well, we love those characters. And for fans of the show, we actually will be returning to cover season 2, which we're very excited about. Jay, we would love to have you back when we do that next year.
Thank you.
I will be in touch with your people, and we'll make sure that happens. But I'm so excited to talk about more than just the show because I'm a big fan of your career. I'm a big fan of your family. We were talking at the top. You come from a very Korean family, and I'm interested. My instinct... So you're a second generation...
No, I mean, I guess I'm first generation. I immigrated here.
From
Korea. From South Korea.
Okay.
I was 6.
Okay. So I can't imagine that your career aspirations neatly aligned with those of a traditional immigrant family. I might be speculating, but I'd love to hear you speak on that.
I know, and it's so disappointing because I haven't even played a doctor on TV. At least that would be really
What about
awesome.
a lawyer, though?
I've never even played a lawyer. I know. It's
just
it's
a hippie
really,
yogi,
really sad.
which is
a
also
hippie
the nightmare.
Not only am I an actor, but I play an actor on TV. This is like the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
No, it was
not even in a fictional world can you satisfy your parents.
No, and I'm not even married on the show. Like I can't even, and I don't believe in marriage. Like this is the worst thing ever. And it's on Netflix. My parents have no idea what that even means.
Oh no!
They're like, "Is this on ABC? Like fresh off the boat?"
Your husband managed to get a network show. Why couldn't you have done that for us, Jay?
No, you know what? My husband was really nothing until they saw him in a Korean commercial. I'm not even joking. When we first started dating, I was like, yeah, he's an actor. He was starting to do fairly well. But they were like, well, we haven't seen him in anything, And then he was like in a Verizon commercial and they dubbed it in Korean and they played it in the Korean channels and they saw him and that's when they were like, oh yeah, he's an actor.
I'm sure they were thrilled when the interview came out. I'm sure that was...
Oh yeah, they were actually. They were very, very popular at their church, let's just say.
They're South Korean, though, so I'm sure there was at least a bit of an interesting dynamic with that.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And, everybody was saying, oh, he's so much more handsome than Kim Jong-un. And so that's why he's not mad, or that's why, I mean, we actually had security throughout that whole thing.
I'm sure. I remember. Well, I was supposed to go see an early screening. This was back when I still lived in Cleveland, but I was starting to get into this business and some coverage and everything, but our screening was totally just canceled for safety purposes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a very scary time for you guys.
It was a really crazy time. And our daughter was really, really young. And I remember we had security and I thought it was a little weird, to have security every day. And it was a little strange, but I was like, okay. And then our daughter was really, really young because I remember I was still doing Mommy and Me. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was in Mommy and Me. My husband kept calling me. I was like, okay, finally picked it up. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, the security guy just called me to say that your wife and daughter was followed.
Oh my gosh.
So after that, I was like, okay, I get it. I mean, I don't know who it was or why. And then they had also said, yeah, this guy, when you left, went to your door, was kind of poking around. and then like followed you guys.
Wow.
And we cut him off, and it's fine. She's fine, but we didn't want to freak her out, so we're gonna freak you out.
Yeah.
But yeah. So after that, I was like, okay, and then it just kind of ended.
Yeah, I
know?
felt like that. Well, I love
Yeah.
that movie. I thought it was
Yeah, it's a
hilarious.
great movie.
And it's so funny too because like the movie is just a comedy film. I mean, like
Yeah.
obviously I understand why there's some like political loadedness, but it's like ultimately just like a funny Seth Rogen movie
Oh,
with good
totally.
performances.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that thing where you look back and you're like, this was the
Yeah.
reason that like there was an earthquake, like a metaphorical earthquake in our
Yeah.
town. But I'm sure that was just working in this business and kind of going back to your family. When did you sort of realize that this was the career you wanted? And we have a lot of listeners who are aspirational artists, and how did you kind of navigate that, especially probably in a family that didn't necessarily recognize this was a viable career option?
I lied.
Good. That's always an option.
To our viewers and listeners, lie. Yeah, I mean, I hid it for a long time. Like, just first and foremost, I hid my desire to even want to pursue it. And then when I really, really wanted to do it, well, first and foremost, I never thought that I could. I mean,
Yeah.
it was crazy. I was like, it's just a dream. I want to be an actor. Ha ha ha. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I enjoy it. I love it. But I'm gonna try to do something else. I'm gonna, try to, do anything else. But I didn't want to do anything else, and I didn't really try doing anything else. I mean, I did. We got jobs here and there.
Right.
I was like, okay. I did get a degree in design. Mainly because I got a degree in costume design, mainly so I could be in the theater department
Yeah.
because I was doing all the shows anyways. And my parents had just thought, oh, she's being outgoing, she's doing shows, it's great. And they came to support it, and they supported the hobby. But after college, that's when I told them, I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to be an actor. And
Yeah.
it was very, very... it was a painful time. I think
Yeah.
they were very disappointed, and rightly so. I mean, it's. I don't think it's so much that they didn't believe that I could do it. I mean, no, they didn't believe I could do it. But it was who wants that for their child? Like, I
Yeah.
know I don't want that for my child because it's very, very difficult. It's
Right.
just
Constant
the highs
rejection.
and lows. It's a terrible, terrible life,
Right.
So why would you want that? So I do understand it. But the thing is, like, I didn't want to do anything else.
Right.
I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel like I was meant to. And I think it's very, very special just to know what you want to do. That's hard. It's not everybody wakes up and has a passion or thinks that this is what they were meant to do.
Right.
So when you have that, how special is that? So you have to follow it.
That's what, yeah, whenever people ask me, like, should I do this? I'm like, well, do you feel like you have to? Because if you do, then the answer is obvious, you
Yeah.
know? And the one nice thing is I do feel like living in a town like LA, you're at least surrounded by like-minded people who are also kind of scraping along and trying to make
Yeah.
it work. So I'm sure that was at least helpful in your journey.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially in college when I was doing the shows, I mean, that's when I really felt a sense of belonging, not just because I was doing what I loved, but also I was surrounded by people who were also doing what they loved and
Yeah.
who felt like this was a passion that they were, following.
So when you look back on your career, what do you see as your big break? Like, I feel like everyone looks back, and sometimes what actors or performers see as their big break isn't necessarily what we would assume is.
No, it never is. I mean, I still feel like, that big break is just, it never is. Like,
Yeah.
I several years ago, I was cast in a very small film called The Big Short.
Oh, right.
And I got like completely cut out. And my reps, everybody was just like, this is going to be huge,
Adam McKay.
Adam McKay, I played Christian Bale's wife.
Oh.
So it was like a big deal. And I got like completely cut out. So that's the thing, like you think, and then, I even told people and everybody went to go see it
Right.
and like, oh, we saw you on the phone when he answered your call. Great.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like there were so many of those moments where I thought that was going to be it, and then it just didn't work out. And then certain things that you're like, oh, I didn't think anybody was going to see it. And then they do, and they love it,
That's a great point.
My husband and I actually, when my daughter was first born, she was like 6 months old. We did a little web show called Baby Mentalist. And I like get recognized from that.
Wow.
You know, so that's the thing. I mean, you just don't know. And, you know, you just keep working and hope that, you know, so I don't really believe in that big break thing.
Yeah.
You know?
It is kind of a myth. I think that like sometimes the Hollywood version of like the actor's journey kind of perpetuates.
Oh, the overnight success is 15 years.
Right.
Like nobody wants to hear you working at TGI Fridays and going to commercial auditions, you know, like that's not romantic. That's not exciting.
Yeah, so I think it's important for our listeners to hear that like if this is a journey you want to do it because you love it. And the truth is now there are so many more opportunities and access to make your own material. I mean, like even Baby Mentalist.
Yeah.
That can be the most freeing thing is just to self-produce.
It is, but the thing is like even doing that is incredibly hard. And you know it's because people always think that, oh, you know, if you're an actor you can write or you can do other things, you know, and it's not always the case, you know. It's like to create your own material is not that easy. I mean, it's easy to create it. Creating good stuff is very, very difficult.
That's the truth. But what I like is I feel like there's a bit more democracy now because it is kind of the Wild West. And, you know, HBO can put $100 million into a show and it might not make it if the show's not good. So it's like, it's scary in that way, but it does feel like there's a little less power at the hands of these studio juggernauts because someone could come along, Lena Dunham could shoot a movie for $30,000 and win a South by Southwest prize and create girls. So it's like, you kind of do never know, which is so interesting.
I know, you never know. The only thing that you know is that you have to like work on your craft. You have to work on, you know, do good stuff.
Gotta do good stuff.
Yeah.
So now that I'm sure since Friends from College, you're reading more material, getting more offers. Do you feel like you're at the point where you are saying no? Like if you're reading something you're not liking, is that important to you? Or I don't know. I'd love to hear you speak on that.
Yeah, I think it is important to say no. Yeah, I think that's a very difficult thing. Not just as actors, just in life, you know. I have the luxury now to say no. I didn't for a very long time, like last week. I just decided today I'm going to say no.
Great. You heard it here first, guys.
But yeah, I mean, just as far as representation, you know, just as a woman and obviously as a woman of color, I think that's very important, what you put out there. If you do have the luxury, I have no hate on anybody who takes something that, you know, may not be the best representation, but you know what? Rent's got to get paid. You got to eat. Lucky for you, you're doing what you love. Great. Like, I can't hate on you for that.
Of course not. But how do you deal with that? I mean, like, especially in TV film, you do have to just latch onto those opportunities. But as someone who's obviously like a thoughtful, interesting, nuanced person, how do you personally as an artist deal with material that might not be the most satisfying?
Welcome to my world. Except for Friends from College.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the most important things that actors have to do is find empathy in your characters, no matter what. You have to find the humanity. You have to latch onto something that that you can relate to, you know, and it can be a challenge with some roles. Some roles, it can be very, very easy. Some roles, it's like a gift, you know, getting something. And even on our show, I think that we have a lot of freedom to, I know the writers, they tell me that the more we get to know you, the more we can write for you, and that's really fun.
Yeah.
So that's a gift to us, and that's a gift to them. So, yeah, I mean, I think finding humanity, no matter what kind of role you get, whether you want to play it, whether you have to play it, that's challenging, and it can also be really fun.
I'm sure. It's because it's the thing that makes your craft challenging in a way that's probably fulfilling. I want to tread tactfully here because I feel like I could be like the annoying straight white guy who's trying to like reach into the experience of something I don't understand. But when I look at Hollywood right now, I see representation getting better. I see it getting better for women. I see it getting better for African Americans. If you look at a film like Black Panther,
Mm-hmm.
of course we had Crazy Rich Asians this summer, which was such a wonderful film. But I still
Never heard of it.
didn't get heard of them. But it still is interesting. I feel like personally, when I look at ethnic representation across all of
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, I look at South Asian and East Asian representation as still needing to go the furthest.
Yeah.
I feel like that you guys aren't often included in that discussion. I think Master of None did some really interesting work with that last season, but I don't know if you agree with me or why that might be the case. I mean, it's gotten better.
South Asians in particular?
For you, I would maybe speak more on, like, maybe the Korean representation on television, for example. It just feels like that's the most, to me as a viewer, that feels like that's the group that's most readily stereotypes in TV and film, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think, gosh, it's that whole controversy of the model minority, and I think it's just that really, that desire and passion to assimilate, that's been taught immigrants like myself, and obviously second generation, third generation as well. It's changing a lot, I think. The younger generation, they have a lot more of a voice of being kind of who they are and not having to assimilate or not to be that model minority. So I think there's a lot of change. And that's the thing, like Asian groups are not taught to be angry, I think growing up we're just taught to be nice, and we're taught to be to work hard, and you're gonna get stuff by working hard and studying hard. So I think that's like really instilled in us. I can only speak for myself and my generation, but there is definitely, more of a change. And I think the Crazy Rich Asians, for sure, doing so well has a lot to do with that.
Well, and what I so appreciate about Friends from College is, like, I feel like your character's ethnicity is a non-issue on the show. Like, I don't feel like there are really moments on the show where the fact that you're not, a white New Yorker even matters. Which I think, like, obviously it's very, very important when art is leaning into that for a message or for a purpose, but it's also really refreshing just to see actors of color just take roles. Like, that's one of my favorite things I'm seeing.
And I think that's so important to kind of show just different types of people.
Right.
And even with Keegan, being the lead, and being half Black.
Right.
I think that, and we don't really talk about it. I mean, the thing is, like, we do touch upon it, which is great because we're not blind,
right.
and to ignore it and not talk about it, that's weird. And I think that's doing a disservice. So, but I think it's very, very important to, showcase these people, these flawed people, and they happen to be, Asian and Black and,
right. It's just more interesting. It was Lena Waithe who was talking about the fact that, like, we're at a point in TV and film right now where, like, even straight white dudes are just bored of seeing straight white dudes on television. Like, whether or not it's right or wrong, it's just like, we had that for so long. Like, it is just nice. It's like, oh, look, like, everyone. It's just, like, so much less boring, I think.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, straight white dudes are not going anywhere.
Right, we'll be fine.
I mean, they're gonna exist. They're gonna be fine. Yeah. But I do think the change is, I don't think you can get anything made these days with just having all white people on the show.
Yeah, because it's not truthful, and it just is a little more boring. I just think, like, I like the idea of, actually, I don't so much like the idea of diversity for inclusion's sake. I like the idea of diversity because it makes stuff better. Yeah. So I feel like we're starting to see that more and more, which is really nice. As someone who reviews a lot of TV and film, that's been the thing I've appreciated most, is just like a more interesting storytelling.
Yeah.
So you have an industry family. You and Randall have a 5-year-old daughter, 6-year-old daughter. Do you guys want her to be involved in this crazy business?
No. We want her to take care of us when we get old.
I'm sure. Has she had any moments where she looks like she might be leaning into a kind of career?
I told you she was in that web show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And she was fantastic.
Fun.
She was wonderful. When she was 6 months old, she was wonderful. We did it for like 6 months. So in the last episode, she had just started walking. So that was kind of part of the show.
Fun.
And she was like a phenomenal actor. and I'm not even joking. She was a
You're probably
wonderful
like
actor.
stressed out that you're like, oh no, she's good at this. I hope she doesn't want to do this.
I know. And then she got worse, just worse. So she lost it. She lost it. Yeah, she lost the magic. Thank God. She's a terrible actor now.
Good. Thank God.
Well, it's tough because although her school photos this year is fantastic.
Were they?
But she's had terrible photos.
I mean,
so
everyone
she
has
couldn't
ups
take
and
a
downs
photo.
in their career, so maybe she just had a dry spell from 2 to 5. You never know.
Well, she's too old now. I think, for girls, you start to lose your cuteness, and I
She's
know.
not castable
yes,
anymore.
now she has to go character.
That's fair, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
I totally understand. That's a tough journey for female actresses, especially.
Yes, when you age out.
And she comes 7, it's just, that's when it all ends.
It's her and Helen Mirren. You're going after the
Dame
roles.
Judi Dench, Maggie Smith.
And they're going to get it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's too late for her.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm always interested, and we talked about this a bit when I interviewed you at an event a couple months ago, but I'm married to someone in the industry, and some of our listeners are, LA based and probably people who are, going for their dreams together as a couple. Have you guys ever struggled with that competitive factor? Because especially you're both in the exact same industry. What advice do you have for people who might, especially both be actors?
I know, it is very, very difficult. I think that it's been a great thing for us. I think that being in the industry and being both actors, you definitely understand a lot of things. There's a lot of unspoken understanding, like the hours, the travel, the depression,
The crippling anxiety.
the drinking. You understand it so you can really support it. But you can't let it destroy you. Right. I mean, the competitiveness or the attention. You have to know that it's not everything. That you have to create something stronger. I think that's what it is. You have to create something stronger than the industry, than the ego, than somebody telling you you're amazing. Like all of those things go away. And it's not forever. So you have to create something that you can come home to, something that you're proud of. Know that you're going to have ups, they're going to have downs, and that and that's okay, but it's very, very hard, especially at the beginning, and I think that's a really tough thing. I definitely, went through that. I think early on in our career when things started kind of happening for him and feeling kind of like, for me, like getting very close to things and not getting it. And I just remember when we first started dating, I was very close to getting on a show, and it was like between me and another girl, and she got it, and I just like broke down, just cried, broke down, I was like, I'm quitting. This isn't gonna happen. And he was starting to, feel a little bit of an upswing. But I think like you have to know that you're in it together. And as cheesy as it sounds, his success is my success. My success is his success. And know that it means nothing. At the end of the day, it means nothing. So,
I think another thing too is that someone gave me that was really good advice was if the person that's closest to you is succeeding, ultimately that can only help you, Yeah. Because it's like that if that's your teammate and they have a big jump, like you'll be able to grab another hand and jump with them. And the same thing will happen when you have a big moment and, he needs that support too. So it is.
I will spend his money. Okay? His money is my money.
Of course, now you're getting that Netflix money, which I've heard is not bad.
Not as good as network money.
That's true. Network money is really where it's
But that's also a dying. I keep telling him like he's like holding on to that heyday of Hollywood, right? There aren't very many shows.
I know, like it's funny. It's ABC has such good family comedies, but the sitcom's kind of in dire straits on network right now. And I mean, Fresh Off the Boat's one that's great. In general, I think ABC has good family comedies, but I don't want to say he's lucky because that's a wonderful show, but the success rate, the survival rate for network comedies right now is not good.
It's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good, but it's also part of like a really old system.
Right.
And so creatively and, but take that money.
I
Take
know,
that money
take it
and
when
run.
you got it. And it's
Yeah.
nice. There's so many like hacky network shows, and he's on a good one. So that must be nice for you guys. And same with, you guys are both series regulars on really wonderful shows, which is kind of
thank
rare.
you.
Yeah, it's nice for both of you, and it's great for us as well as fans.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun for us, and it's like super surreal, and we're so thankful.
Yeah, embrace it while you have it, right?
And that Nick Stoller, I do feel like Nick Stoller has been like a big part of our success.
That's true.
You know? Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff with him.
Well, he's such, I don't know, Nick, and it sounds like from what you said, he's very hard to work with, micromanaging.
Abusive.
But, yeah.
I didn't even get to that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Francesca's the worst.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Is she pretty involved?
She is. Well, you know, they actually met in college.
Perfect.
And
they were at Harvard, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Just like me.
Are you Harvard?
State school, baby.
Well, I don't know. I just figure all white men are from Harvard.
I'm flattered you think I'm even remotely smart enough to get into Harvard. I must be faking it very well.
Well, judging by our show, you don't have to be smart to go to Harvard.
Oh, that's true. That's a great point. I'm glad I didn't go to Harvard.
Yeah, yeah. So, what were we talking about?
Oh, just Nick and Francesca.
Oh, just Nick and Francesca. Oh, those fools. Yeah, they're just the nicest people. They're both. Francesca actually directed her first episode this season.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, we can't wait for this season. It's coming out in January. Jay, this has been so much fun for me. You're such an easy conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We will be back covering season 2 of Friends from College, guys. I don't know the exact timeline on our coverage. Typically with Netflix shows, we'll let our panels like binge the show and put together some coverage. So I'd say about a week after the show premieres, you can expect us to start covering it. Jay, we would love to have you back when it comes. I don't know. We'll talk to your people and make sure that happens. But such a wonderful show, and just so many congratulations. Marianne is so specific and weird, and I can tell you're making
Specific and weird.
in the best way. It's like there's so many versions of the hippie yogi that I've seen before, and you're bringing something that's like, oh, this is awesome. I haven't seen this yet. So props to your performance, and cannot wait for season 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we will be here covering that. And Jay, once again, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Anything else that you would like to promote, plug, as they say, to our fans who are listening?
Oh, do I want to
Anything that you, I mean, I know, any more baby mentalists?
No more. She's hung up her gun.
Fair enough. She's aged out.
She's aged out. She's too old. Yeah, you don't want to see her now.
Well, we'll wait for Friends from College, and of course they can follow you on Instagram if they want to see any more updates. So, and guys, my name is Jeff Graham. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can do that at Jeffrey C. Graham. I host a weekly pilot review show here on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. We just changed times, but where we review a new pilot each week. Last week we reviewed Julia Roberts' new Amazon show Homecoming. That was very interesting.
How is it?
It's good. It's
really good.
I listened to the podcast actually. I know we're both podcasters, so it's a great performance from her. And it's nice I think this is her first time on TV in a long time. So it's of course TV's where all the best stuff is now anyway. But we're reviewing a new YouTube show this Wednesday called Origin. So check that out.
Oh.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
I think I know that one.
Yes, and I will be back doing more Spotlight Ons, more interviews with amazing talent. Till next time, guys, thank you, and we will see you soon here on AfterBuzz TV.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.